You're listening to Truth on Tap with host Kevin Kierstead.
Ladies and gents, thank you for checking out Truth on Tap. This is Kevin Kierstead, your host. I encourage you to interact and chat and call into the show. You can Skype in with mr.kevin.kierstead, that's K-I-E-R, stead as in steady, or call in to 910-NO-LYING. It's 910-665-9464. Truth on Tap delivers news and views with one core principle in mind, truth. This show brings that like nobody else. The real truth about news, paranormal sightings and research, politics, religion, and focuses mostly on human behavior in those areas. You can listen to shows in Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or even from the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/truthontapshow. For Spreaker, it's www.spreaker.com/user/truthontap. Or for iHeartRadio, you can go to www.iheart.com/talk/show/truth-on-tap. That's a mess. That's a lot to remember. Just Google Truth on Tap, and you'll be able to find all the ways you can listen to this wonderful show, which is wonderful because of you, the listeners and participants. Thank you again for checking out Truth on Tap.
You're listening to Truth on Tap with host Kevin Kierstead.
Opening up the truth pipeline for these bitches.
Truth on Tap. Truth.
My right to say how I say it's mine to give. My right, my heart, it's mine to share. My soul, my heart.
Truth on Tap.
Any right to abuse. Just the wish to use. Chop it up and recombine. Chop it up and
Truth on Tap.
Jack it up and recombine it. My God, maybe that's been the problem. Jacking it up is okay, but you shouldn't recombine it. Is that necessary? I don't think that's entirely necessary. Truth on Tap's the show. Kevin Kierstead. Today we're talking about the VA. And you'll have to bear with me because I am dealing with a slight audio issue here. Yes, no, hello, there we go. Truth on Tap's the show. Kevin Kierstead's the host. Today we're dealing with the VA. The VA, Veterans Affairs, should be the VU for Veterans Unfairs. Perhaps I have given it an unfair title. It's possible because the VA can be fair. Here's the problem, and there's a lot of them, but here's the first problem. Here's the first problem you're going to notice. We think of the Veterans Administration as the military. It's not. It's what happens after the military. Did you know that? Did you know that soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, they don't get VA care until they've left the military? Let's get that straight. Secondly, all this talk about problems at the VA seem to be focused on health care alone. That's arguably only half of the issue. Veterans' claims, which go down a range of issues, from education to disability compensation. The backlog is ridiculously high. I'll share the numbers with you today. Ridiculously high. But here's the biggest problem. It's America's public, and how it takes America's public to be hooked by the news media before it will do anything. And then what happens? A little swell rises in the sea, and a few boats might move, but then it passes, and the boats sink back down to where they were. And that's what's going to happen this time. You know, I don't have to be a rocket scientist, and I know a little about rocket science. I'm a veteran, and I'm a disabled veteran. That isn't pulling rank. That is having some insight that you may not get if you're just an average American citizen who has not paid much attention to the VA. I'm going to tell you about the VA. But I'm not just going to give you my little anecdotals. And I've been inside of and cared in 6 different VA hospitals across this great country. The VA has one goal under the surface of its skin. What it says on the top is, if you've served honorably in your nation's military, you ought to be honored with medical care for injuries you sustained while on duty, and with more recent legislations for any issues. You ought to be given a little extra something. A little extra something. Free health care. At least low-cost health care for those that aren't service-connected, as it's called. I'm a service-connected disabled vet. I did get hurt in the line of duty, but it wasn't the kind of thing where, as in the case of Shinseki, where you lose half of your foot stepping on a landmine as a forward artillery observer. This man has honor dripping off of him. The VA was not his fault. Not what happened in the past 5 years. And I don't want to start working from back to front. We're going to work from front to back. Truth on Tap is a show. Kevin Kierstead is the host. If you want to catch up on this, you're not too educated on what's been going on with the VA, and maybe you're not real interested, we're going to talk about that too. Let me say something as an American citizen. Forget that I'm a vet for a second. I don't think you should feel obligated to necessarily care about your nation's veterans. I don't. You may not agree with any of the wars we have fought. And the irony is, as I'm sure you see, that many have fought and died to preserve your right to not like those wars. Because go over to Russia and stand out on the street corner and start speaking out against the current actions in Ukraine. See how that does for you. Tell us how that's working for you. Give us a call. Did they give you a phone call in Russia? No, I don't think so. Maybe they do, but they say they do. You know, there's a lot of saying going on without a lot of doing behind the saying. That's worldwide, and the VA is no exception. But the VA is something I know a little about. The VA is something that has finally caught the attention of the news media for its once-per-decade show. Oh, that's what happens. Something breaks. The media gets a hold of it. They force feed it to the public. The public gets hooked. That's how the media gets you on anything. That's any media. It doesn't matter if it's mainstream or, as Sarah Palin might call it, lamestream media, that being the most popular form of media, which, in my opinion, does like to operate around principles, at least, of truth. After all, you have The Onion, or my book, The Unbitten Onion, if you want lies about the news. It's fun to write lies about the news, but hey, that is a secondary objective to what we're talking about here today. Not even an objective, although I do like to have fun with my shows. I don't promote my own books on my show. I don't know why. I could. Nothing holding me back. I just it's tedious. It feels fake. It feels like selling. I don't like selling. Never been a good salesman. But I am good with truth. Truth is a thing I'm really good with. That doesn't mean I share all the truth with you. Do you have some personal things you wouldn't want to share with people? Yeah, you got one or two? I do. I got stuff I don't want people to know about. Yep. Stays between me and my family. It might pop out on this show. I might get a caller in that turns out to be Satan, a.k.a. my ex-wife. Get a few lines, get a few punches in on the ribs before I can recover. Yeah, it could happen. It could happen. I'm trying to keep my private life private while revealing as much as possible to you, if it can, in fact, add to the pot of truth. If the anecdotal and the analytical based on fact, logic, reason, can provide more truth. Truth that's not sitting there, readily available for you to grab and digest in a quick, happy little snack. 2 cakes in a pack. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing today with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We're going to start off today with a little bit of history. Oh, the VA's got a history. Did you know that? No, not just 1 or 2 incidents. Not even just 9 or 10 incidents. It's got a history. And we're going to talk about not just what it did, but why it happened. It doesn't take a lot of words. I won't spend much time. And you probably already have a concept in your head of the relationship between a nation's public and its military and ex-military members. There's a relationship that can be based around an emperor, and the belief in the emperor. It can be based around a dictator and the belief that the dictator is bringing whatever it was that country felt like it needed at the time. Where you find out what's binding you to your military and former military members is when you compare your feelings about them near a war in which you are genuinely nervous about your enemy. Those feelings compared to how you feel about them when there's no war nearby that you're really worried about. If you see a major difference in between those two, you're catching on to how the public sentiment flows into and out of the United States military and former military members, and that goes worldwide. In some countries, people who have served in the military are treated like kings. In some countries, everybody who is able-bodied is required to put in a couple of years in the military. In some countries, it is considered a gift and an honor just to be able to get into the military. The United States falls somewhere in the middle. We do tend to generally show honor toward our veterans, but we also realize that veterans get a pretty sweet deal depending on what they sign up for and what they do. It's not a bad deal going in. You can get a guaranteed job. Your recruiter is going to promise you all kinds of fantastic stuff, but let's face it, you're going to get 3 squares, you're going to get a soft bed, you may be sent to fight and die. You sign up for that when they don't even lie to you at the recruiter about that. In basic training, when I was in Air Force basic training, they took us to a building. Very quick story. There was a lady there, captain, I believe, or a major, I can't remember. She had a piece of paper in front of her, and everybody was being questioned. I was with her at the time, and there were other officials there talking to other people in what we called a flight. In Air Force basic training, it's a flight. So I had 40, 50 guys in my flight, in my group. And so we're all talking to different officials, and this captain looks at me and says, "Are you willing to kill another human being in a time of war?" And so there I am at 18 years old. I'm kind of foaming at the mouth. I'm ready for a fight. But I didn't answer like that. I looked at her like, why the fuck are you asking me this? Do you think they lied to me about this part? Or that I was just too stupid to realize joining the military could get me killed? Yes, ma'am. That's my answer. And, looking back on it now, I feel like a dumbass for not saying more. Why would you ask this question? This question is implied at the signing of the documents. Is there somebody in basic training? I wanted to find out. Did someone say no? Did someone say, I joined under one premise, but I have since, in the first 15 days of basic training, become a conscientious objector? Is that what happened? I wanted to know. It didn't make sense to me. And yeah, we've softened a little since then. Just a little. This was 1990. So we're coming up on 25 years ago. We softened a little since then. We've gotten a little softer. We're allowing, PTSD used to be seen as kind of a weakness. Kind of, oh, you're trying to get PTSD. You're weak. You just need to be tough. Suck it up. Well, right there's part of the problem. Please hook that little morsel of information into the back of your mind. People treating the VA as if it were still the military. It is not. It is to take care of the leftovers of the uglier parts of war and the more tedious parts of peacetime. The leftovers. That's what veterans are. You have to decide. The whole world right now, there are plenty of countries out there and people fascinated with America. They watch everything. I've got UK friends that just love to watch what's going on in America. My friend Chobi in Australia, he loves what's going on with America. There are many nations full of people out there that just love to watch America like it's a show. Well, guess what's on tonight? It's the VA. How does America treat her veterans? That's what it is about. What I'm finding is that a lot of people talking about it don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That annoys me. It'd be okay if you said, listen, I was on the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. Maybe I did a little bit of, some sort of pre-military schooling, cadet schooling, something along those lines. So I'm not real familiar with this, but here's what I've read. If you could just say that and then show me your intelligence at work based on what you've read, I would totally respect you. But when John Boehner comes out today and says veterans are not getting the care, I have a problem. Veterans are getting the care. They're just getting it extremely late, and it is given in a very Cracker Jack box toy type of format. Here's what's going on just under the surface with the people at the VA. There's been one exception to this, and that is the Washington, D.C. VA. Why do you suspect, in my experience, that the Washington, D.C. VA was just about perfect? Can you make some inferences there? You want to talk about a polished product? It was the showpiece for the VA. Foreign dignitaries, people from Congress, everybody who might even be interested in the VA, who also had power, would take a look at the Washington VA. Well, let me tell you something. The way they run that DC VA is nothing like the other VA hospitals I've been to. The floors, you could eat off of them in DC. The people treated you like you were a king there, from the receptionist to the nurses to the doctors to the lab technicians to the x-ray technicians. And then you go to Hampton, Virginia, the very lowest on the scale of VAs I've been to, and you are treated like someone who is coming in begging for help when you have another way to get help. You're just too lazy to do it. That's what you're treated like. And I see it in their faces. And this was not one visit. This was not 3 visits. This was not even 10 visits. We're talking about extended visits from around 2001 up until last year that I've been to that VA and others, but mostly that one. And I saw it in their faces. And I talked to some of the employees there because I got to know them. And I started learning what's going on there. Let me tell you what's going on at the VA before we get into the history. At the VA, there is a culture in each hospital. That culture is not necessarily like the next hospital. And that culture revolves around 2 basic concepts. One is, here I am, a VA employee. How's everybody else acting? I'm a new employee. How are all the other employees acting? They adopt it right away. At the Hampton VA, it's much like a contagious cancer. You are seen as a number, and I need to get you out of my face. If I can get you treated, get you seen, and throw some pills at you and get you out of here, I win. That's how you're treated. Except by certain of the nurses and only 2 of the doctors I can think of. The rest, get you in, get you out. Get you in, get you out. That's all it was. That's all it was. Now, the other thing that's going on with the VA is that because there's a difference between the cultures among various VA hospitals, there can be no uniform care. No, anybody you hear talking about national VA healthcare issues, they can't talk about them in sweeping terms because each hospital is different. Each area is different. There are states that take special actions to get their veterans treated in private areas if they can't be treated at the VA for overflow or any other reason. Some states don't. It all varies. And even within the same state, it varies. We're going to talk about all of that. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes many times, and it's almost sickening. It's almost sickening. And let me tell you one thing. If you know me, you know this. This isn't about me being a veteran. I don't like it when somebody loses a child to a DUI and then becomes an activist against drunken driving. You didn't care about it until something happened to you, and now you're the spokesperson. I've never liked that idea, that whole idea, not just about DUI, that's just one example, about anything like that. What about being interested in it before it affects you? That's a thing that I can honor. And I was interested in veterans care before it affected me. In fact, from when I got out in 1994 up to about 2002, I didn't bother with the VA. I don't think I went one time. I had to go for one exam, and that was it. And I didn't go there for 7 or 8 years in a row. Partly because I just felt like I was invincible. Partly because I had heard the nightmares. And the nightmares were right. waiting for care, getting the wrong prescriptions, getting appointments canceled on you just as you're getting ready to leave your house. They try to, at the Hampton VA, they don't mention to you that you can get reimbursed for travel expenses. We just switched my VA care to the VA in Richmond, and they were upfront about it and said, you can get reimbursed for your travel expenses. You get $63, something like 30, I think it's the industry standard, 33 cents a mile, something like that. You're getting paid for your mileage. Not a bad deal, And the reason is because you had to drive so far. Now, if you live closer than 15 miles or so, you don't get anything. I don't know what the cutoff is, but it's something like that. So you can get care at the VA. This is not what's going on. What's going on is cultural, and what's going on is delay. And the bottom underneath, you're looking at the floor, but I'm telling you what the ground is right now. The ground comes down to management and money. The budget for the VA, something like 3.7% of federal budget, is not adequate to cover the expenses of the nation's veterans. Now, you can talk all day long about privatization. If we want to go a route like that, I'm all open for it. But right now, this VA system had nothing to do with Eric Shinseki's failures. Nothing to do with it. What it had to do with is the big beast it has grown into that cannot be tamed by a single leader. The way you fix something like this, if you don't privatize, is you start chopping off heads. This is one of those cases. I don't like the bully mentality that you gotta go swinging axes left and right. I'm talking about purging VA hospital administrators left and right. If the IG finds anything going on with the records, with the response times, get them out. Let them know that the culture is now going to change. Not in one VA hospital, but across the nation. The culture must change, and it must become uniform. That's a big deal. We're going to talk about that too. And I'll take your calls. 910-NO-LYING is the number. 910-665-9464. Or you can Skype in mr.kevin.kierstead. I have a lot of friends who are veterans that either are listening or will be listening to this. And I just want to give them a shout out. Memorial Day just passed. You guys, I know what you're dealing with. I'm dealing with it too, and I'm sorry. And maybe in our minds, we see military people who served honorably as semi-heroic, at least in a small way, at least in the kind of way where you should, not like something that would get you on, what is that CNN annual thing they have about here, CNN heroes? No, not just serving in the military, no. But you signed something that said up front in an ideological way, I'm willing to die for America. And I'm proving it right now with an ink pen in my own hand. That's a little bit more than just saying, I love my country, I'm a patriot, look at me with a red, white, and blue tattoo. It's a little bit more, wouldn't you say? A little bit more. And then you start stepping up in who gave the most to those that willfully had to go on suicide missions. And yes, they've done it many times in the United States military. They're at the top for me. They went in knowing they were going to die and did it anyway, knowing they were going to die. Those people won't have to worry about VA care, bless their souls. The rest of us do. The rest of us can either ignore the VA and pretend we weren't veterans and that we aren't supposedly entitled to these health care benefits, or we can go fight it. What usually happens, though, is complacency. Complacency, any situation. You get used to it, don't you? It's a sad thing. And it's going to happen again. Right now, you're seeing it. I don't care where you're listening from. You might be in Tokyo. You might be in Lisbon. You might be in Portugal. You might be in Bangkok. But you're seeing the height of attention for America's veterans. This is a frenzy. This is what we would refer to as a media frenzy about veterans. It's the most attention veterans are going to get for the next 10 years. So if you have something to say about veterans, now's the time to do it. Ride the wave, because it'll be gone. If I had done this same show 2 months ago, I wouldn't have got probably 5 listeners. Nobody's interested in it. put it in the news, get some people interested, let some people see some scandal, get a little taste for that. Now they want to know about it. Well, now I'm one of your insiders. Let me explain what a visit to the VA is like. Before we do any of that, I need to go and check and see if anybody's in chat. Nobody's in chat yet. Shame on you mofos. Because I know that I have friends that are vets that are listening and they're going, is he going to tell it all? Is he going to tell it all? Or I'm going to have to call the man. I may have to call the man. Yeah, you can call the man. You can call the man. 910-NO-LYING is the number to do it at, or Skype mr.kevin.kierstead. K-I-E-R-stead is in steady. So I'll just tell you what an average visit at the VA is like. You go in. Now, if you're on one of your first visits or you have to go see a specialist, in other words, you haven't been to a certain office yet, first you got to go to the information desk. And probably 7 times out of 10, they're going to refer you to someone else to find out where you have to go. Here's the first handoff. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the phone system. Half the time you can't even get through. When you can, you get handed off sometimes to 10 different departments to find out the results of an x-ray. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So you walk in, you're probably going to get handed off just to figure out where you have to go. Why are they calling information? I don't know. Rarely do they even know where you're supposed to go. You got a piece of paper with you. Got the room number on it. And they'll tell you, well, if you'll go over to Prime 1, and they'll talk to you and tell you that if you need to see this doctor and that, you might have to register. I don't know if they want you to do blood tests, you bring your x-rays. I don't know if you have to have paper filled out about financial means. You might have to do this and that, and just, maybe you should just cancel and just make it for another day when we're not so busy, because as you can see, the lines are just long to get into any of these clinics. That's how it goes. It's ridiculous. I mean, it is like it's like a health sweatshop. That's what it's like. In general, the VA has a history of low-quality caregivers. These are the guys that couldn't make it in the private practice. There are exceptions, as you know. I'm going to read you a specific example about that. I'm looking at a story called The VA's Troubled History. I cannot vouch for the accuracy of all of the things in this story, but it's looking pretty accurate to me. This is from CNN, okay? CNN.com. It was just put out on the 23rd, and it broke with the scandal. So Michael Pearson, CNN contributor, was on the ball and said, let's find out about the history of the VA. He got into his research. Here's what he brought up. The VA's troubled history. I want you to look it up. I'm going to share the link to this. Please just scan the timeline. You're going to know right up front that this is not something unique. This is not something where there were a few issues since 1975. And I'll put the link to that page on the show announcement page on the Facebook page. The VA's troubled history. I'm going to read a couple of them to you, but I'm going to read every year to you that something happened. All right? 1921, Congress creates Veterans Bureau to administer assistance. Remember, we're not even going to get out of 1921 before this whole thing blows up. Congress creates Veterans Bureau to administer assistance to World War I veterans. It quickly devolves into corruption and is abolished 9 years later under a cloud of scandal. That was the foreplay for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And if that was not some sort of predictor of what was to come, I don't know what was. 1930, the Veterans Administration was established to replace the troubled Veterans Bureau and 2 other agencies involved in veterans care. Now look at this. Now I'm just going to read a couple more, and then I'm going to skim the dates with you that something major happened that was corrupt in some way. 1932, thousands of World War I veterans and their families march on Washington to demand payment of promised war bonuses. In an embarrassing spectacle, federal troops forcibly remove veterans who refuse to end their protest. This is 1932, folks. 1945, resignation. 1946, American Legion goes after Omar Bradley. 47, 55, 70s. There's a list of things there. 72, year I was born. Vietnam veteran Ron Kovic, I think it's Kovic or Kovich, the subject of the book and movie Born on the 4th of July, interrupts Richard Nixon's GOP presidential nomination acceptance speech saying, according to his biography, "I'm a Vietnam veteran. I gave America my all, and the leaders of this government threw me and others away to rot in their VA hospitals." There's your litmus test, folks, for 1972. You think this is new? This isn't new. The VA has never been right. Not since it started. Might have had a couple of glowing years. Major reform. People getting a renewed spirit, but right back into the same old thing. This bureaucratic debacle that we now call Veterans Affairs. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, 1974, so COVID goes on a hunger strike. 1976, 1981, 82, 84, 86, 89. President Reagan signs legislation elevating the Veterans Administration to cabinet status, creating the Department of Veterans Affairs. Here we go. This is one I wanted to read to you. There's a couple actually here. 1991, Chicago Tribune reports that doctors at the VA's North Chicago Hospital sometimes ignored test results, failed to treat patients in a timely manner, and conducted unnecessary surgery. Unnecessary surgery. Why do you suppose they did that? Guinea pigs. Guinea pigs. That's all. This is 1991. Not Hitler's 1941. 1991. 1993, VA Deputy Undersecretary of Benefits R.J. Vogel testifies to Congress that a growing backlog of appeals from veterans denied. Okay, you want to talk about backup. All right, we're in 1993. The growing backlog of appeals from veterans denied benefits is due to a federal court established in 1988 to oversee the claims process. Washington Post reports the VA, Vogel tells the lawmakers, is reeling under this judicial review thing. Yeah, damn the rules. Just let us do it our way. Lawmakers open an investigation into widespread problems with clinical research procedures at the VA West Los Angeles healthcare. Investigation followed years of problems at the hospital, including ethical violations by hospital researchers that included failing to get consent from some patients before conducting research involving them. We're up to 1999 now, 2 years before 9/11, and we're still guinea pigs. We're still guinea pigs. 2000, the GAO, Government Accountability Office, I believe that stands for, finds substantial problems with the VA's handling of research trials involving human subjects. Guinea pig. 2001, despite a 95 goal to reduce waiting times for primary care, remember this, and specialty appointments to less than 30 days, the GAO finds that veterans still often wait more than 2 months for appointments. Now, this is 2001. And it's a big deal. Does that sound right to you? If it was really a big deal in 2001, would we be where we are in 2014? No. And I'm telling you, this story that's blown up here in the past couple weeks is going to pass too. And nothing's going to happen unless you, by the tens of thousands, if not millions, get on the computer or get on the phone and contact your lawmakers and drive them crazy. All you got to do is send a paragraph. If a few million people do that, shit lights up. Change comes. People are getting chopped. They're renewing the lifeblood inside the VA system. I don't know. I mean, you can't go on a head chopping spree, but it is so sad the low level of resources available not only for VA care but for the oversight of it. It's ridiculous. It's sad. I wish the VA were gone. I think we just need to go. We need to incorporate this and make it somehow a fold into Medicaid. Fold it in under a veterans clause. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of a way to fix this. It's like someone who's broken both legs and had them healed 17 times trying to play running back. You're not going to fix it. You get a new running back. I don't know. So a 2003 commission appointed by George W. Bush reports that as of January 2003, some 236,000 veterans had been waiting 6 months or more for initial follow-up visits. A clear indication, the commission said, of lack of sufficient capacity or, at a minimum, a lack of adequate resources to provide the required care. Don't you see what's happening? This is 2003. So what happens? A bunch of legislation gets passed. A bunch of money's thrown at it. Well, we're in 2014, and it's the same fucking problems. Some things have been addressed. And before you get into finger pointing, I got information up here in front of me. We're going to talk about what Obama promised and what he delivered. He is just a president, so don't be... Any president cannot be the sole source of anger, vitriol, or credit when something goes right or wrong at the VA. Come on now. We're limited. We're limited in what we can do in executive powers, especially when you've got a divided Congress. 2005 and on was typically a revelation of significant problems with the quality of care for surgical patients. North Carolina hospital. One veteran who sought treatment for a toenail injury died of heart failure after the doctors failed to take account of his enlarged heart. This is basic pre-screening testing you need that he just didn't get. 2006, the VA loses 26.5 million veterans' records stolen from a house from a VA employee who shouldn't have had it anyway. Yeah. 2007, outrage erupts after documents released to CNN show some senior VA officials received bonuses of up to $33,000 despite a backlog of hundreds of thousands of benefits cases. Okay, this is separate from medical care. This is the financial and other benefits. Hundreds of thousands of them just sitting there, going real slow. Nothing has changed. 2009, the VA discloses that they've misspelled here. You got to throw a curveball at me, CNN. You need an editor. The VA discloses that they wrote that then. The VA discloses that 10,000 veterans who underwent colonoscopies in Tennessee poorly disinfected. 37 tested positive for 2 forms of hepatitis. 6 tested positive for HIV. Go to get a colonoscopy, you come out with the AIDS. Welcome to the VA. Anyway, VA Director Eric Shinseki at that time, he was new then, initiates disciplinary actions and requires hospital directors to provide a written verification of compliance with VA operating procedures. This is where the problem started with Shinseki. He got his written verification, but they were lies. That's what these secret lists have been. Shinseki came in and did put the hammer down. And people said, well, we'll just lie to you. We'll just tell you what you want to hear while we're still doing the hospital thing our way. And that's what they did. The VA discloses that... Okay, we did that. That was the 10,000. 2011, 9 Ohio hepatitis after routine dental work. I mean, outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in 2011. 5 veterans die. Widespread contamination of the facility dating back to 2007. They don't clean their equipment. 2012, VA finds the graves of at least 120 veterans in agency-run cemeteries are misidentified. The audit comes in wake of a scandal at the Army's Arlington National Cemetery involved unmarked graves and incorrectly placed burials. That's a disgrace, but I don't know why that's in this article. It may have been a VA screw-up, but it's not applying to the care of veterans. It is the accuracy with which they label graves. And in some cases, they can't even find parts of a veteran's body. So I see this as separate. I see this as a little bit separate. This is more of a spiritual, religious kind of respect to the dead issue versus active care of United States veterans. I don't know. Maybe you see it all in the same thing. They did. This guy did. So 2013, former director of Veterans Affairs Facilities in Ohio, William Montague, is indicted on charges he took bribes and kickbacks to steer VA contracts to a company that does business with the agency nationwide. Yeah. Agency? Yeah, this is another thing that bothers me, that people just don't understand. They don't even understand. The President of the United States today called the VA the VHA about 6 times in one speech. A simple trip up, I get that, but I find a problem when you don't even know what the VA, when you're forgetting your acronyms. It just tells me you're not doing your study and you're not staying current on stuff. At least 40 veterans died while waiting for appointments. This was April 23rd. All right, so now we're into 2014. I'm not going to read you all this stuff, Let me tell you, this is just for 2014. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 incidents, 19 incidents just in 2014 since the real investigation has begun. The problem? It's not going to change shit. It's not going to change shit. You're going to lose interest in this, unless you're a veteran, within a month. And when the pressure from you drops, the pressure on everyone else drops, and the effort follows suit. And we're back to where we were. We're back to where we were. You know, I had a good VA doctor. I'm not going to say his name because I don't know what kind of legal repercussions that could have, but he said, you know, I was telling him I got to do something about my back. I have severe arthritis in my spine. I got to do something. Yoga's not going to get it done, Doc. He was all about yoga. Now, he said he had been hit by a drunk driver and that he also had a bad back. He said he could not advise surgery. People never got better with surgery, or at least in most cases. I asked him about shots. I said, well, what about cortisone shots directly into the spine or something like that? Something less invasive, but more effective than pills. And he said, well, there's a decent chance you end up getting something like spinal meningitis. And at the time, I said, he's just anti-fix. He says he's thinking if yoga and pills can't do it, you don't get it. Well, about 6 months later, there was an outbreak of meningitis, specifically from those types of injections. So he was right on. He was spot on with that. But that was an exception with him. He, very smart doctor, committed to veterans, though. There's incentive, folks, and you know it. If your office spends less money, if your office can get more vets in and out, you're getting recognized for it. You're getting recognized. There's incentive. There are very few totally pure people working at the VA if they've been there for a couple of years or longer. The corruption creeps in. The culture creeps in and takes over, like vines that grow across their chest. Here, we deal with veterans as problems, not as a chance to serve national heroes. That's what it's like in Hampton, Virginia. Oh yeah, I'll say that out loud. I'm calling you out, Hampton. I'm calling you out. And I would watch over these years as different administrators. How many have they had in Hampton now? 7 or so in the past 10 years? Goddamn ridiculous number. You could see when a new one had come in, everybody'd perk up, be a little nicer. Things would move a little smoother. Your appointment times would be reduced as far as delays. But then it started spreading back out again because people got comfortable again. And that's the culture. At the Hampton VA in Hampton, Virginia, that's the culture. The veterans are numbers. Get them in and get them out. Now, you know and I know that anytime I generalize like this, there are going to be exceptions. There is another doctor I had there that was a primary care physician. Let me explain something here real quickly. This primary care physician was a superstar. Now, I don't know. For all I know, he lost his medical license. But he was a superstar at the VA. The guy brought a cot in to his office. Remember, he's paid salary. He got no incentive for working late, so that he could treat veterans for longer in the day. And he did. Saw me one time at like 6:30. Offices closed at 5 there, or 4:30. And I had to go over, because I'm like this, and talk to guest relations, or whatever that office is called at the VA, I can't remember, and give the man a compliment and say, this doctor didn't have to stay to see me. And he did, because he got backed up because he had too many patients that day. He wasn't slow, he was just thorough and methodical. And what a guy. What a guy. Anyway, so you know what they give him? For that, for doing something that was good enough to get the attention of a patient in such a way that that patient would come and give a compliment on back channels, he got a $10 gift card to, I believe, what they call the local canteen, which is just a kitchen. I think that's what he said they called it. I'm not sure about VA hospital terminology as far as working there. They gave him a $10 gift certificate. If that's your incentive to impress a patient at the VA, are you going to react to that? Is that going to motivate you to go get a free lunch of shitty food when you're already sleeping in a cot in your office so that you can work more hours to try to help treat all these veterans that are having to wait so long? Yeah, it's broken from the inside, my friends, and it's broken hard. And here's all we need to do right now. Put pressure on Congress. Put pressure on your representatives. Call your local veterans hospitals. Surprise them. Surprise them. You think you're going to interrupt with veterans care? Good. Somebody needs to interrupt to get these people thinking, because at least what we could have is some professionalism. I think we could ask for that right now, across the country. Professionalism, treat me like a patient and not like a project you wish you didn't have to do. Could we start there? Push that culture and shove it down the throat of the VA. That's where it starts. Because at least you could make veterans feel better, more human, and not like government rejects that just fell out of the military. The culture is sickening. The one exception I've seen is the Washington, D.C. VA, and the more I think about it, the more I look at these stories, the more I remember my experiences, I realized I was looking at puppets. I was looking at a show presented for high-profile people that would come in to see how a VA hospital operated. So the guys that are regulars at the D.C. VA, well, I went there 3 or 4 times myself. They're spoiled. They're spoiled there. That's the extreme high end of care, in my view. Richmond, Virginia has a good program. Hampton, VA sucks. I went to one in Delaware, sucked. Went to one in Texas off of Lackland Air Force Base, sucked donkey dick. I'd blown my knee out. My knee was the size of a damn basketball just about. So what do? They take a needle, they shove it into my knee, they put a friggin' IV tube there and drain the knee into a milk carton that was cut in half. Remember, we're not on a battlefield here. We're in a VA hospital. And nothing has changed. You know, I was a little bit culture shocked at the DC VA. To be treated nicely, to see professional, clean equipment. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It reminded me of private doctors and private hospitals, because I'd gone to several of those while working, using my work insurance to get MRIs and stuff, because I was trying to stay away from the VA for anything serious. But ultimately, it's what I'm stuck with right now. So I have to deal with this shit if I want any health care. And I'm tired of dealing with it. Not in this capacity. Not the way they treat people now. It's got to change. It's got to change. And, you know, the sad part, what's got me bothered today is that it's not going to change. If I could convince you to tell 100 people and they could all tell 1,000 people and could convince them to tell 100 people, we'd have a movement going. But I'm not good at starting movements. And frankly, I think it would just be a second wave. You got the wave the media has started. Now veterans getting attention, and we'll be treated like gold for a month or two. We will. If we have appointments, it's going to be palpable. Here comes a veteran. Here comes, make way. You know, make you feel like a king. Oh, I'm not just talking about people like me. I'm talking about your toothless, homeless veterans that have no money, who admit to their doctors that they are addicted to street drugs, and they're just coming in to get their regular prescriptions or, you know, x-rays or be treated for God knows what. And they consider themselves on the lower rungs of society. They have no pride left. Pride's the first thing to go when they get in that situation. But they're treated well. And I've seen it on their faces before. I've seen shock when someone comes out and says, Mr. Lewins, are you here? Yeah, will you come with me? We're just gonna take your blood pressure and do your vitals real quick. That's one way they can do it, and they have done it. That's the way they do it in D.C. You know what I hear when I go to Hampton, VA? Kierstead. That's it. I stand up, I get a nod. Like, all right, I'm standing here. Are you going to come or not? Come on, giving you free health care. I think I may have overestimated how much America cares about her veterans. I think I may have. I think I might be wrong about that. I think we're in more of a progressive mindset that leans away from the need for violent forces, especially of the man-made kind when you have drones and nukes. and more toward solving other issues within American society. We don't feel a real global threat right now, and therefore it's very hard for the average American citizen to have a lot of respect for a veteran or someone who's serving. Very hard for the average American, especially the younger people. They don't know about it. They're not interested in World War II. They haven't learned about any of this stuff, and you're expecting them to come in and think of you in this high esteem, hold you in high regard. Maybe I'm expecting too much. I think I've made a mistake in general, and I think we're probably looking at, if I had to put a number on it, I'd say about 15% of Americans of voting age, deep down in their heart, care what happens to America's veterans and our military forces. Some other percentage, some larger percent than 15%, cares if they die in combat, and that's about it. I don't know. I think I have underestimated the power of not caring, and maybe that's what I'm at odds with right now. I'm at odds with the average American right now for not caring, and I'm at odds because when there is a threat, there's a change. And I'm telling you that change shouldn't be there. Because once a person signs up, male or female, old or young, once they sign up to put their life on the line to protect what you have, maybe you don't owe them anything, but your container within which you think about them ought to change immediately from the average container. Because what I've often thought about doing was trying to start a rally. And as long as the VA continues with this 130-something thousand backlog VA claim cases, tell America's military, all of them, to lay down their arms. What do you think China would do if we did that? The whole military just went on strike. They will not fight. Holy shit, we could take America right now. You want to see action? Do that. Do that. Russia? Holy shit. You know, all the nuclear systems are down. We don't have enough people manning the computers that control them, much less people to put the codes in to get them to launch. We're completely vulnerable right now. You want to see action? Do that. I think something like that is coming. That's a ways off. That's 50 or 100 years off. But I think something like that type of demonstration is coming. Everybody's afraid to now for court-martial and dereliction of duty, and I could go on, but something like that's on the way. Let's take a look and see if any of you fucktardian refugees have made your way into chat. You have not yet. It would behoove you, which I don't know what that means, but it's always said in that context, to get in there on the chat. Spreaker.com/user/truth-on-tap. You can get in on the chat there. You can do it from the Facebook page, facebook.com/truth-on-tap-show. Don't forget the show. TOTS is an easy way to remember it. So let's see. There's so much more. I've got to go over with you the brush up from how this broke to where it is right now, but it's so short, it's ridiculous. I've already put the link to it on the Facebook page. So just read abcnews.go.com. It's right there. Gives you the quick rundown. I'm talking bullet points, Cliff's notes here. Quick rundown on what broke here, how this story gets started, what's going on with it. Number 2, Eric Shinseki. He was not the problem at the VA. I understand his resignation. An honorable man like him will not stay in an office that his very presence in and the doubts and questions presented by that continued presence will distract from the actual outcome of veterans seeking care. Distract. He won't do it. I know why he stepped down. He will not be connected with that. He knows that he's, for his whole life, put his life aside for others. And he's doing it again. He's not going to stand there and have to field questions every time he walks out of the VA hospital about what happened with the delay list, which he didn't even know about. The IG report will show. he's not going to try to feel that and still try to be effective in drilling down to get through this stuff. He knows he can't do that. He knows it wouldn't be a service to his fellow vets. So you bring in someone new. He knows that. This guy's been around. If you haven't looked at his military history, you ought to have a gander at it. And it's not just that. I mean, the companies he's run, he's done just about everything. And he's got a good, I'm looking at 25 medals and badges here. You know, the only branch of service I don't see some kind of damn medal from is the Marines, because they don't give medals, they just give orders. I know we've got the Army Distinguished Service Medal, Navy Distinguished Service Medal, Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, Coast Guard Distinguished Service Medal, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit, Air Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, Yugoslavia Service Medal, Armed Forces Service Medal, on down the list. And of course, the Parachutist badge. Always trust a man who skydives. He understands odds. Yep. All right, so I'm not going to spend any more time on this show going over Mr. Shinseki. I think he's an honorable man that did honorable deeds his whole life, and he was put into a car that was the size of Rhode Island with an upside-down engine, 3 tires, and people smoking crack inside the cabin, and expected to drive straight. He couldn't do it. He tried. That's all I'm going to say about him. In fact, as far as I can tell, there's not really much more I can add to this show. All the reading that I've done, I've already conveyed to you in the best way that I know how, the spirit of what's wrong at the VA, the history of what's wrong at the VA, the fact that although I don't know exactly what needs to be done, this cannot continue. It's a shame. It's an international shame. If you think that it's all Obama's fault because you want to hate him, I'm not going to try to talk you out of that either. I'm sitting here right now looking at PolitiFact on the promises about veterans on the meter, and they give you a certain promises kept, promises half kept, promises compromised, promises not kept. They've got about 15 listed here, about 13 of which he's kept. So, you know, and they have their references. I have no question in my mind about the commitment of any president, really, that I've known in my lifetime toward veterans. I don't, they're just, it's automatic in America. You just, you know, that's just me. But the facts are there. You can read them, or you can choose to believe that he hates veterans and he hasn't done anything. Whatever makes you feel best. I tend to like to follow the evidence, and that leads me to this. And the one promise that it says here was broken, and this one even bothers me a little bit. It says, reduce the Veterans Benefits Administration claims backlog. What they don't mention there is that, which he mentioned today, is that you had a sudden spike in people coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And then you had an additional spike coming from not only the aging Vietnam age crowd, who is now starting to have more health problems just because of their age, but also the fact that things like Agent Orange are now going to be covered. So now you have to come in and get evaluated from that. That sends the backlog through the roof. So it's, you know, saying you're going to do one thing and then actually reducing something while its foundation is jumped up at twice the rate, looks like you're not reducing something at all. You can believe what you want there. I've seen the numbers. I know what happened. You know, create Veteran Job Corps, he did it. Create Green Vet Initiative to promote environmental jobs, he did it. Dedicate more resources to fight employment discrimination against military reservists, he did that. Launch supportive service housing program for veterans to prevent homelessness, he did it. Expand housing vouchers program for homeless, he did it. Expand Veterans Administration's number of centers of excellence and specialty care, he did that. Made the Veterans Administration a national leader in health reform, stalled. Yeah, you bet it stalled. You bet it stalled. That was a big promise. That was a big promise. Allow all veterans back into the Veterans Administration. There's a compromise there, but he did it. It used to be that if you weren't service-connected, you got no care. You can get care now at the VA, but you may have to pay something if you weren't service-connected. It's very small amounts. Fully fund the Veterans Administration. He's increased the spending many-fold. As he promised he would. Assure the Veterans Administration budget is prepared as must-pass legislation. He did it. It's not something you can debate about. Establish standards of care for traumatic brain injury treatment. Compromise. I haven't read the detail on that one. Expands veteran centers in rural areas. Did it. Increase the Veterans Administration budget to recruit and retain more mental health professionals. He did it. So you can go on down the list there and say, who am I going to blame for this? Don't blame anybody in this administration. Don't blame anybody in the last administration. And don't blame anybody at the administration before that. The whole thing has been broken since its inception. I think we may be looking at a fundamental need to incorporate veteran care with civilian care. I don't know what else to do. As long as it's separate and it's this huge bureaucracy, it's just going to sit there like that car, the side of Rhode Island, with the 3 wheels and the crack smokers and the upside down engine. That's going to be the result. That's really all I've got to say about this. We will do a part 2 in which I will take calls if you'd like to talk about this. But my voice is gone already. Didn't sleep again last night. Yeah, medical issues. Not the VA's fault. They throw every kind of sleep medication at me, but I don't. I either take them and they won't keep me asleep, so the pain still forces me awake, so then I'm like a zombie, or I take them and they do knock me out and I sleep too long. So I just don't mess with the sleep meds. That's a whole nother story, but it revolves around the pain. I sleep when the pain lets me. The fatigue has to overcome the pain. It's really that simple battle going on. But there are veterans out there far worse off than me, and to think that they're not getting care in a timely fashion, to think that they're getting care with substandard equipment and some substandard medical professionals is something that should enrage you. Maybe enrage is too strong of a word, but it ought to stir you up and maybe stir you to action. And if it does stir you to action, I've got some links on the Facebook page for the show announcement that you can find out how to get in touch with your Congress and your local representatives to do something about it. That's what we're going to call a show. Pappy's going to go get something to drink and try to keep his voice from completely escaping. And we will continue this issue if I get some interest back from you guys in it. You want to tell me your stories? You want to tell me more about it? You want to tell me how wrong I was about something? You can do it. You can do it. Pull up your sources. Be ready to have your sources. Change my mind. Let me see you change my mind. Do your magic. So anyhow, that is that, and here goes this.